Welcome. What if one day you looked at your life and realized this isn't it? What if you walked away from the grind, the expectations, the supposed tos, and traded them for freedom, curiosity, and a school bus pointed towards anywhere? Today on I Have Questions with Michael Ruland, we begin part one of a three-part conversation with someone who's actually done that. In this first chapter, we explore the spark, the moment he and his wife decided the life they were living wasn't the life they wanted. Along the way, Corey discovered how little he knew about the world, how much he had to learn, and how saying yes can reshape everything. If this sparks your curiosity, hit like and subscribe to I Have Questions with Michael Ruland. It helps my show grow and brings more curious minds into our conversations. But for now, let's get into part one because
I have questions.
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 I'm thinking of the food that doesn't have questions, which I do.
All right, troops, as promised, a guest. And again, like always, I know you like guests because you hate listening to my gravelly voice. Today's guest is someone that I have known for 20 years now. 20 years. I met him in 2006. He was a freshman in high school. He was a pain in the ass. Apparently, if you're a pain in the ass, I glom onto you, I think. He has done something that I think, most people would love to do. And that is he saved up his shekels and set up his life and quit everything for a few years and traveled the country and the world. And that's quite frankly what I want to talk to him about today. I want to live vicariously through him. And the other fact you need to know about him is as a freshman, he learned how to make sour cream raisin pie. I don't know if he remembers that.
I do. I do remember your
He
birthday
does.
pie.
He made me a birthday pie, sour cream
still talk
raisin.
about
Oh my
that.
God. That's awesome. So let's just get on with it. I want to introduce everybody to Corey Watts. Corey, how the heck are you?
I am doing fantastic, sir. It's
Awesome.
been a wild ride and a fun few years. Coming back to
That's
reality.
awesome.
Come back to reality is a bit of a trip. A little bit interesting.
We're going to find out why you came back to reality here in a little bit. All right, brother, are you ready?
Ready to go.
All right, I'm glad you are because you know what? I have questions. So, Corey, as I brought up, you have done something that I know a lot of people dream about, and that is, quite frankly, turning in the daily grind and making travel and experience part of your life. So, can you just give us all a quick little overview on what made you decide to do that, and then just a little bit about your travels?
Yeah. I kind of knew it was always something that I wanted to do. Kind of just like traveling in the back of my head was always something that very much intrigued me and very much made me want to get out and, see the world. And I was always kind of a wild child, always kind of searching for the extremes, what kind of crazy stuff I could get myself into. And it kind of just, as I'd done things in my life, it kind of just evolved into me being like, this is the next step for me. This is the next thing, is that I'm going to, like you kind of said, design my life in a way that I could take off an extended period of time and just go wherever my heart felt like I needed to go. And, with my wife in tow. And it was fantastic. And, we were able to, during COVID, we saved up a bunch of money. And, once me and my wife had a point one night where we were just like, this isn't it. Like, we're not happy in what we're doing. We're not fulfilled. We want to do something else. And so we decided that, the whole buying the house, white picket fence kind of idealism wasn't exactly what we wanted in that point in time. And so we saved up our money, and then we quit our jobs, and we built out a van and drove around in a van for 3 months across the United States until we realized that we were both 6 foot and a van is not the the move. So we bought a little miniature school bus, and then we lived in the miniature school bus for 3.5 years. And just cruised around and spent 4 months in Southeast Asia and 2.5 months in Central America, and just kind of roamed around, saw as much as I could.
Yeah. Awesome. When you did that, I applauded. Actually, I think if I remember right, I got to see your bus before you built it
Yes, I
out.
yes.
Yeah, you just picked it up. You got it on the Cadillac converter special, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Yep, yep.
Oh gosh,
I
that's
actually
awesome.
just sold it too.
Did you
Yep, but yeah,
with it as a a mobile home type thing, or did you strip it out?
I'd completely gutted it because I lived up at Snoqualmie Pass with it for like a winter and a half, and just because it wasn't really built out for being like a winter rig, it gets a lot of condensation inside, so everything kind of got
Yeah,
musty. So my plan was to rebuild it, and then so I tore everything out, and then plans of course changed and life changed, so then it was just an empty shell. And all the hard stuff had already been done, so I was like, just put it up on marketplace, and I was like, hey, whoever wants it, here's a perfect canvas for somebody to build their own thing and go out, and it sold, and there's now another couple living in it, driving around the United States with it right now.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So as you're kind of telling that story and talking about it, and I know now you're back in Western Washington doing your thing, but as you think about your whole life and the arc of it so far, is there a theme that you think describes you that you think is important?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just following the beat of your own drum, and doing what's true to you and what really makes you happy is something that I've always kind of strived for. In that sense, is like, I'm not one of those people who can just sit down and live a life that's not what I want. My life is always, I've spent a lot of time creating my life the way that it is, so that I can go out and do the things that I want to do. I don't have kids on purpose. I don't have a house on purpose. Like, I didn't even have a car payment until this
Yeah.
year. I've never, bought a vehicle until now. And so it was like, all of these things allowed me to have the freedom to go out and do what I wanted. And that was kind of my whole goal. My whole life was chasing this feeling of intense freedom and being able to do whatever I wanted at any point in time.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So I know this is digging into a little bit of our personal conversations and some things that I've picked up from you. But at one point, you mentioned you were in Central America for a while, but you said, excuse me, you said at some point in Nicaragua, I think that you realized that you really knew very little about the world and that your time there kind of changed everything for you. Can you explain that to me and everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, going out, it was my first. I mean, everybody does the Mexico, your Canada, your little easy jump, or like trips just out of the country. And you might go spend a weekend in Cabo, or you might go spend a weekend up in Victoria or whatever. And they're fantastic and they're great experiences, and everybody should absolutely travel. But going to a third world country that's outside of anything that you've ever experienced, and especially with a country like Nicaragua, which has had a lot of bad blood and influence with America, and
Hmm.
realizing that all of the kind of things that you're taught in school didn't exactly go down the way that they said they did in the history books. So then, to
Yeah.
get to see that, and just also see what, how the rest of the world lives, when we live in such a privileged society, in such a privileged country, and, this existence, 90% of the world does not live the way that Western countries do. And seeing that really opened my eyes. And it was, it took being down there and seeing that there's other ways that life works. There's other ways that countries and societies can flourish and or just exist. It's such a wild experience, because when you realize that not everything has to be the 9 to 5 grind, not everything has to be that way, that
Yeah.
it kind of opens up your whole world to realizing that where what you've experienced and where you are is such a very small part of the entirety of this human civilization and what we do. It's crazy. It is such an
Yeah.
eye-opening experience. And, you know, I think it's something around 40 to 60% of the world lives on less than $1 a day. And, once you begin to see that, and you see what living on such small amounts of capital can do, and how people still survive and how people still flourish and have, a life and a family and are extremely happy, which is something that you wouldn't expect. You think of a third world country, you think of it being poor and sad and all that, and it's not. Like, these people get around and have a great life with so much less than America and so much less than Western countries. And when you kind of take that in and, mull around on it, it's really hard to be sad as a person coming from the Western world, to be like, wow, like, I have opportunity out the wazoo. I have so much, such a different life, and I have so much opportunity and so many things that are all at your fingertips that other people don't have. And so
Yep.
when you realize how lucky you are, it really changes your whole outlook and perception on life for that sense.
I lived a very similar experience actually. In the late 80s, I went to Honduras with the National Guard.
Mhm. Yep.
During, as a matter of fact, the Honduras-Nicaraguan War, when those two countries were at war. And exactly like you just, I was a farm boy from North Dakota who hadn't left North Dakota really.
Hmm.
And so it was eye-opening to see exactly what you're talking about. And so,
Yeah.
and true, all of it is exactly spot on. It's funny how almost 40 years later, it's the same experience
Yeah.
that you had, that I had, right? So as you're traveling around and meeting new people and the whole thing, something that I would love to say I instilled in my kids, you being one of them, but I doubt is true. I can tell myself this, but you say yes to people a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
To a
you
fault.
just say, right? You say, yes, let's do it. I think that's maybe why we get along. We just are like, I don't care about what the end result is. I just want to say yes and see what happens. How
Exactly.
has, right? How has your, we'll call it ability, I think, your superpower to say yes, how has that reshaped your worldview and opportunities that you have encountered?
I mean, it's crazy, because I very much, before I started traveling, I lived, even though I still was my wild, crazy self, I didn't engage as much in just opportunity seizing and, being able to jump at anything that turned at me. And it was because I had things that, like, I was renting, I had, jobs, all that stuff, which limited my ability to say yes and
Mhm.
just be open to things. So when I started traveling, I met somebody who's a very good friend of ours now, him and his girlfriend. And he was pretty much 18 years old and jumped on a super yacht and started traveling the world that way. And that's who me and Laura ended up going to Nicaragua with. And he we I sold him my van and then bought the school bus. And so one day he was like, "Hey, let's link up, let's meet up." And I was like, we had never met. This kid's from New Zealand, he was, and so we met up and we hung out for like a week and a half, and then we parted our ways, and he looks at me and goes, "I'm going to Nicaragua in like 2 months. You should come with." And I was like, "Oh wow, I've always wanted to get out of the country. That sounds
Yeah.
fantastic." So then we did, and that kind of spurred the whole just saying yes to every crazy, wild opportunity that I could. And, he helped show me that it's like, that is what's going to give you your wildest experiences, the craziest stories, the funnest experiences, is just being open and willing. Like, obviously being smart, having your wits about you while you do it, but
Yeah.
making sure that you're making the most of these experiences. You're saying yes when those opportunities arise, because you may never get that opportunity again. And a lot of people will never get that opportunity in their entire life. And so don't waste it, don't squander those opportunities. And some of the most amazing, crazy things in my life have happened just from simply saying yes to people and going in full bore. Like, that's the thing, is like, if you're going to live this lifestyle and do this thing, you can't dip a toe in. You got to head dive into that pool. And so that really, it just kind of shaped everything. And now, still in my life, it has taught me that, like, these opportunities come out of nowhere, and you should just be willing to accept them if everything feels right and it works out. And B, you're going to get such a deeper experience out of life, out of putting yourself in maybe what some could consider uncomfortable situations. But
Yeah.
it all pans out to be a great story and just a great experience, and helps mold you as a person, take you out of your comfort zone a little bit. and which I think is very important.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 of my conversation with Corey Watts. In this opening chapter, we've explored the spark, the moment he and his wife realized the life they were living wasn't the life they wanted, and the courage it took to trade comfort for curiosity. From building out that van to discovering that a school bus would become a better home, from crossing the United States to stepping into Southeast Asia and Central America, Corey reminded us that freedom isn't something we stumble into. It's actually something we design, one choice at a time. What I really love about his first part is how honest it is. There's no filters, no pretending, just a guy who followed the beat of his own drum and learned more about the world and himself than I know he ever expected. In part 2, we're going to dig deeper into those experiences that reshaped his goals, his worldwide view, and the direction of his life. It's a definite power shift, and you won't want to miss it. If you're enjoying the journey we've been on so far, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's free, so you don't miss what's next. And if you've got thoughts, questions, or stories of your own, email me anytime at ihavequestions20. As always, thanks for listening. And stick around because, I still have questions. Hey, P.S. Speaking of traveling, imagine the year is 1805. That is kind of hard to imagine, actually. The Lewis and Clark expedition is pushing west. They're exhausted, they're hungry, and they are completely unsure of what waits beyond the next ridge. And then there's Sakakawea. We all say it differently from wherever we are. I grew up saying Sakakawea. There's Sakagawea. It depends on where you live. Anyway, Sakakawea is a young Shoshone woman. She's barely 16, and she's carrying her newborn son on her back as she walks thousands of miles into the unknown. But she wasn't just a guide. She was a bridge. She recognized plants that could heal the men with her, landmarks that kept them on course, and rivers that would carry them forward. When the expedition reached Shoshone territory, it was Sakakawea who actually made that moment possible. The chief that they needed horses from was actually her brother, a reunion that neither of them had ever imagined. Because of her, the expedition actually got to cross the Rockies instead of dying in them. And through it all, she carried her baby, Jean-Baptiste, strapped to a cradle board on her back. To the tribes they met along the way, that child signaled peace because, no war party traveled with a mother and an infant. Her presence alone opened doors Lewis and Clark could have never opened themselves. Sakakawea didn't write journals or clearly claim any credit. But without her knowledge, her calm, and her courage, the most famous expedition in the United States of American history might never have reached the Pacific. She reminds us sometimes that the quietest person in the group is the one holding the entire journey together. Peace, love, R.